Thank you guys for coming. Another little drizzly day, but we have some fun conversations, so welcome to Heft. This is our new gallery, 5 weeks in now, and this is our second conversations. I'll tell you a little bit about what that means for us. So the gallery is focused on artists using systems of different types to create new works with algorithms, machine learning, artificial intelligence, photographic processes, whatever sort of systems works towards the artist's vision. Tonight we're going to focus on Gretchen Andrew's work here in front of us. Facetune, yes. So Facetune Portraits have been a series that Gretchen's been working on for a number of years, and this Universal Beauty series is a body of work that Gretchen approached me about maybe in the beginning of 2024, and we decided very quickly we need to put together a solo show for this work that was in development, being worked on, and I didn't have a gallery. Anyhow, we decided we should first bring these to Untitled in Miami, and her first works in the Universal Beauty series were of contestants of Miss Universe in swimsuits. We brought 4 works there. Gretchen was awarded the 21C Museum Prize there. That's awarded to only 5 artists out of 170 some booths in Untitled. They acquired 2 of the works. We placed the other 2 works with collectors, and she's been working on this series since then. I still didn't have a gallery after Miami, but in the last few months, we pulled this together, and I've been so excited to present this as our first solo show. We opened 2 weeks ago. We had some fun. We wore some sashes, we took some pictures, and it's been amazing to see these works all together. The presence that they have, I think you all can feel it, really radiates both the meaning behind the works, which we will be talking about tonight, their beauty, and the diversity across these paintings. So to elaborate on what's behind these works and some of the voices associated with them, we have 4 speakers tonight. Gretchen will be our first. Yes. And I'll introduce the other 3 as they come up. The way that we do conversations here, like our program, Focus on Systems, has its own system, its own way of working. We have some rules. Every conversation has 6 minutes. We did 7 minutes last time. We're going to tighten it. 6 minutes. We're experimenting. I have my companion here. This is my trusty development clock from high school photography. I lived in the dark room. My photography teacher helped me get into art school. As I left, I gifted her my best print, and she gifted me this development clock, and it's going to keep us on time here. So we're going to do quick, fun conversations. We're going to get to know some of the works. And what I want to do just before we get started is give just a little bit of background for anybody who doesn't know a little of the process behind this. We'll talk about it more with each of the guests today, but just as a foundational understanding of what we're looking at, how these were made, just from a process perspective. Gretchen's been collaborating with Matter Labs for the last 2-3 years on a new process of painting. And so I'm just going to get technical about it. We'll talk more about what this means to the work. We'll talk with one of the engineers who's been actually collaborating with Gretchen to bring these works to life. But what happens is the images of Miss Universe contestants are collected and prepared for painting, and a canvas, just like a normal painting, is prepared with an undercoating of a silver metallic or other colored metallic paint, oil paint, and then layered with an impasto thick layer of white paint that creates texture in the paintings. And so Gretchen is hand painting, sometimes using a brayer, which you can see in the texture, mostly in the background, other times using a variety of brushes, palette knives, to apply the white, a white layer behind. The next process, which involves, I think, one of the only oil painting printers in the world. This is a painting robot that comes by and applies a 4-color process that yields this image. On top of that, Gretchen is interpreting the image using Facetune algorithms. Facetune algorithms are beautifying algorithms commonly used on social media that reshape the body, reshape facial features, and do that in the same way across any body type, no matter where you are in the world. And we see the desire of the algorithm to cut in certain places, to expand certain places, make lips larger, jawlines different, and that is what you are seeing with the painting marks that go on top of the painting. And they're applied with a plotter that's holding different paintbrushes, nubs, and tools that follow that algorithm's lines and reshape the body. These somewhat violent yet beautiful marks are kind of a dance between the painter, Gretchen, and the robot. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works and what that means. But I wanted you to understand that it's a multi-layered process, and the algorithm, I think, is really seen in different ways across the different paintings and brings to light this story. So, anyways, we'll hear more about this. Let's get into the conversations. Gretchen, you want to come up? Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I realized I was going to say too much about these. All right, let's go.
I can talk about them for hours. So
Yes, let's do it.
that's why we have the clock.
6 minutes. Okay. So, in your words, just quickly from your perspective, what's happening in paintings?
This is a physical manifestation of a usually digital and invisible process of beauty filtering.
Yeah. Besides Miss USA, which one's your favorite?
I really like Miss Vietnam.
Miss Vietnam.
She's very impassive.
Great color, the brushstrokes, very gestural. Are these works made more by sheer effort or by manifestation?
I think manifestation is effort.
Manifestation is effort. So what's the most effective way of manifesting for you?
Big affirmations, girl.
Affirmations, very effective. What do you think that these works manifest? Like, what will they impact in the world?
I think these works will manifest a celebration of diversity.
Agreed. Are they paintings or are they digital artworks?
Digital art is a collection of practices. These are paintings.
These are paintings.
I have a digital art practice, and these are paintings.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's your training in painting?
I trained with a figurative oil painter named Billy Childish, who, if you don't know him, he was an artist around the time of the YBAs. He was Tracy Emin's childhood sweetheart, and as the Hearst and Emin were becoming very popular and successful for conceptual art, he created the Stuckist movement, which believed that artists who don't paint aren't artists. And he's so traditional, he's reactionary. And he was exactly the person to learn how to make figurative oil paintings from. Very traditional apprenticeship environment, copying his work, life drawing, making my own paint, real charcoal situation.
Yeah. So Childish was obviously an influence. Were there other particular artists that were influential in this series?
Yes, especially in portraiture. I wanted to find a way to represent multiple ways of seeing within a single portrait, the way AI and algorithms see us and the way we look. So I was looking a lot at Frank Arbach and Giacometti's paintings, other things that can hold that instability of a portrait image within a painting.
I talked about the process. Could you do a better job of describing the underpainting particularly? That's a really interesting part of it.
Yeah, so because this oil paint printer doesn't have any depth, no impasto, no texture to it, I create this set of marks that's entirely done in white paint. I use a zinc oil paint because zinc is a transparent pigment But if you look specifically, and you can see this after the talks, the difference between Russia and like Miss USA in gender painting, with her I used a palette knife, so the paintbrush cuts through it much more cleanly, much more crisply, creating a very different effect than some of this more brushy work here. And I wanted to find a way to use that underpainting to emphasize the painterliness of this process and also to really create a diversity within these as paintings.
Were you reacting to the country you were painting at the time to say something about them?
I was reacting to the image, and at this point in the process, I'm dealing with form and color and texture and not subject or concept.
Yeah, I mean, they are very gestural. A lot of the mark making is very painterly and gestural. What part of your hand painting training played out in these works?
So while the algorithm of the robot determines all of the shape modifications, what is changing with this woman? Other aspects of traditional mark making are in my domain: speed, pressure, and I brought this up for you guys. I mean, this might be obvious to you, but when you're making a painting or a drawing, the speed at which you make a line totally changes the quality of that line. The pressure at which I make that line changes the quality of the line. And I am there with Gen, who you'll meet later, saying more pressure, more speed, more like conducting the robot here, trying to get these painterly effects to be different.
Yeah. So besides what we've talked about in your experience painting and the techniques that you use, what about you is in these paintings? The artist is always in the work.
Yeah, these are all self-portraits. The tension between who we're told to be and who we are is something I've been exploring personally, and that is how I'm in all of these paintings.
So in the making of them, do you consciously balance the intention of what you want to happen with the painting with serendipity and the happy accidents that happen?
Absolutely. When I receive from the Facetune algorithm the set of lines that the robot's going to execute, I then break them into different brushes, and those become different files that the robot gets given. I always have a plan for these ladies, and often that plan changes because I'm reacting to creating a balance. There are a couple specifically in like Miss Russia. Originally I had planned these lines to be thicker, and I was loving how linear she was becoming. And then, with this painting, the way that her traditional gown was being destroyed was something I wanted to emphasize more than I had originally planned.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I actually have more questions for Gretchen. We might do like a quick Q&A and a couple bonus questions for me to ask afterwards. But I'd like to call up Jeff Lee, please. Yay!
Thank you so much. And I apologize. I actually had an appointment after this, so I will duck out.
We appreciate you being here. This is a serendipitous encounter that we get to have you up here. I'm going to put you on the timer, though.
All right, let's go for it.
Yeah. All right. So really quickly, before we get into your background, what are we looking at in your words?
You're looking at the determinant of a woman's career in her whole country's dreams. The preparation that goes into this single moment can last up to 10, 15 years before she sets foot on that stage. What is true for every single one of these images, too, is, first of all, they're the preliminary competition of Miss Universe over the last 2 years. And what they represent is the apotheosis of the work I do as a judge and a coach, which is to prepare each contestant to be at their very physical peak via makeup, lighting, the physical training of it, and the confidence.
That was actually my next question, is how are you involved with Miss Universe? So you're a coach for Miss Universe contestants.
Yes, countries come to me, and I'm the only coach out there that I know of at this level who does not take money. So I can choose who I invest my time and my efforts into.
How did you learn the skills that make you an expert coach for Miss Universe contestants?
I went to beauty pageant school and then graduated with a diploma. No, there's no such thing. You have to basically. I was an overweight kid who watched this pageant in 1995 and wondered how on earth I could ever be a part of the Olympics in my world. And in a similar vein, I think that's what motivates a lot of the people doing what they're doing now with these images, which is they are face tuning them. They are taking the footage of these women, because it's not just a still image, it's an actual competition where they walk on a stage. There are set poses, there are certain things you do, much like figure skating or competitive swimming that you do. And the fans now take these images of these women that are at their very height and they face tune them.
Wow. Are the contestants face tuning themselves? Do you think
I think they have some pressure to do so
They do.
themselves.
Huh. Has it changed, has Facetune usage changed the way the contestants present themselves before they even start?
Absolutely, and I think it changes the whole psychology of it. There's an understanding here that what we're presenting to you is real life. It's maybe with 2 pounds of spackle and a lot of good lighting and diet and a great gown that was made for you, but it's real life. And it's also intended to show you the unique features of each woman. One of the things I'll note too is, you might be the most beautiful out there, but you won't make it to the top 10 until you've had an interview with the judges. And that interview colors how the judges vote for you, on top of how you walk, how you pose, the little extra things that go on top of just a still image in that beauty.
Do you think that the judges are influenced by these algorithms?
Absolutely. You cannot go onto your social media without being hit in the face with Facetune.
Right. So in your practice, can you train somebody to be beautiful?
Yes. You can. Anyone can be, because at the end of the day, there is a standard at Miss Universe, one that is growing, that's becoming more and more inclusive, which I think acknowledges the reality of the world. But the beauty at the end of the day is not about the symmetry of the face or about the height. It's literally about that je ne sais quoi, and that's what we're aiming for when we look for a winner.
I was going to ask you to describe what that is, but I guess you literally just said it cannot be described.
Yes. Something comes over the winner at the moment she steps on the stage. I can't describe it, and you know right away that she's going to win. I would argue the year with the blue background, that was 2 years ago in El Salvador, my contestant made the top 10, and the winner was extraordinary. On that night, I just said, oh shit, Nicaragua has it, right? She has it. And bear in mind, right, there's so much nuance to this competition. For example, you've all seen it. The women walk out, they pose, and then they turn. But there's an enormous difference in that, at that moment that image is captured, between the woman that walks out, looks at all the judges, and she's leaving, gives you the eye, right, and captures your attention. And that has nothing to do with the gown or the physical beauty of the contestant, everything to do with the confidence.
And that's something you can teach?
Yes, you absolutely can teach it.
So what do you think these paintings, what about these paintings accentuates the contestant's beauty?
Well, it positions them in the conversation we're having right now, which is that we're in a world of extreme homogenization of beauty that may have begun with standards of beauty, but look, going back to ancient Egypt, you have Nefertiti. There were standards of beauty going back to pre-dynastic civilization. What we have now is Facetune modulating all of our standards into one very boring amount, amalgam of averages. And right now we're seeking exceptional, right? Because that's evidence of a real life. These paintings are evidence of the uncanny valley that we're all converging into, because when you Facetune everything into one median, there is no soul, no expression. I watched the footage of one of my proudest contestants. She fought sexual harassment, made it onto the stage in Miss Universe, and they had taken out all the personality, all the things that I thought made her beautiful. And instead it was just another featureless morass that made her indistinguishable from Philippines or Brazil or Vietnam. What this series also does is it shows you the anatomy of where we focus all that convergence onto. The legs, the face, the jaw, the eyes. In many ways, those are the most important features to understanding someone's life and the personality.
Interesting. Have you heard at all from the contestants about what they think of the
I think that they're quite worried. I would have loved to bring out one or two, but I think that they thought that I was coming here to walk into a lion's den and being a trained lawyer and also someone who prepares them for tough questions. I said, why don't you join me for this endeavor? But once you've been on that stage through that fire, I think you might shy away from tougher crowds. Although I don't think
not too tough. Come on. Do you know if the Miss Universe?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jeff. I'm going to call up Nicole Sales-Gallus. Nicole is the VP and Director of Digital Art at Christie's. And, well, let me get the clock going here. I will start the same way. In your words, what are we looking at?
We are looking at a collection of Miss Universe contestants and showing how the world thinks that they can be more beautiful.
Besides Miss USA, which is your favorite?
Brazil.
Painting. Brazil. What do you think is challenging about these paintings?
I think aesthetically it can be a bit challenging from a collector point of view. I think they're beautiful far away to keep in your home and from a commercial point of view, and then you get up close and you're sort of wondering what you're looking at.
There's a tension.
Yeah.
How do you think art markets interact with challenging work in general?
I think it depends. I think new, emerging artists, challenging work, sometimes it's tough. I think sometimes the market is tough on challenging work, but I think with galleries like yourself and doing education and things like this, I think it's only getting better.
Yeah. And do you think collectors are more drawn to aesthetics or ideology?
Definitely depends on the collector. I don't want to stereotype, but I think some of the collectors that I'm working with now, more so than some of the traditional collectors in the Christie's world, I think do care about ideology and process, and that is part of what they appreciate about the work in terms of the process and the system, in addition to the end result and the aesthetics.
That's promising. Do you think that AI and algorithms in general can understand our preferences, our own preferences, better than we can?
Yes.
You do? How so?
I mean, not all of them, but I think definitely has that capability. I think sometimes I'm blown away by some of the things that AI, helps me with these days.
Yeah. How do you differentiate when talking about works that you're showing that you're working with? How do you distinguish between innovation and spectacle?
Great question. It's tough. Great question. It's usually talking to people that I respect, we as a team respect in the field, and hearing how other people are, viewing their work and understanding their work and interacting with them. We're dealing more and more with primary market, so directly with artists, not exclusively, but more so. And so it's really getting to know the artist, hearing directly from them, and it's what they care about. Do they care about the spectacle? Do they care about it going viral? Or do they care? Are they really passionate about the message and, what they're trying to accomplish with their series or practice?
All valid. What is a blind spot that most collectors have about art using systems and digital processes?
That there's only one way that digital artists use technology. I think that is a huge misconception, and I think what we're trying to do at Christie's and what we have done, hopefully successfully up till now, is to show the myriad of ways that tech as such a broad concept is used in art. So whether that's AI, and that's tons of different ways. That's GANs, that's LLMs, that's text to image, that's writing your own big data sets, that's what you're doing. Every artist has a different nuance in how they're using even AI, and then all the way to blockchain or VR or sort of you name it. I think that's the biggest misconception by far.
Yeah. So at Christie's, digital art is defined more by process than presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's been challenging about presenting digitally made works, process-wise, in physical formats?
I think the biggest challenge is when we work directly with artists who mainly produce their work digitally and then are trying to work with us to show it tangibly or physically. And every sort of artist, and it's not really a competency that Christie's generally has in terms of printing something or working with Matter Labs to produce something, or so that's probably a nuance that we're working through.
If you can, take your first impression without any back knowledge of this work. Does it present as paintings, as digital art? How do you see it? Yeah. did the Facetune concept come through? How did that present in the work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it takes a couple seconds of looking through it and maybe looking at a few together to see, at least for me, to see sort of, oh, this is, the waist is becoming skinnier here, or, oh, the lips are becoming bigger here, oh, I get it, and it's sort of, you're seeing all the different, options, and the myriad of ways that Facetuning is working.
Yeah. Do you think men, or actually I should ask, how do you think men see these works differently than women?
I mean, I think that to stereotype, I guess, men, I would think, probably takes a longer time to realize that this is even Facetuned.
I hadn't seen Facetuning algorithms prior to working with Gretchen, actually. How do you evaluate emotional resonance in works like these and, works with procedural methods used?
I think it's the same
Yeah.
as in other works. I mean, people have asked me that before, and I think whether you're looking at a framed screen of a video or you're looking at a painting or a print, I think there's still an emotional reaction.
Where do you see the greatest curatorial gap right now in art using different systems, processes, in physical formats?
Good timing.
Thank you, Nicole. Come talk with me. This is Gen Leonard. He works at Matter Labs. Do you have a title at Matter Labs? Just
Not really.
it's like who does everything.
It's we do a little bit of everything. So
Okay.
I don't really have a strict title there.
Very fair.
I would say, generally speaking, I'm like a production assistant.
Oh.
I want something like the production president, senior.
I'll say this. I've worked with Matter Labs for almost 3 years now,
Right.
off and on.
Yeah.
And seeing what you do, it's a small team of, I would say, 2-3 people, hands-on. And Gen, Jeff, and Ben do amazing work with very little. So I've been impressed. We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Right.
All right, now we're on the clock. Yeah. So besides Miss USA, which one is your favorite?
I mean, I like them all. But I would say I liked, process-wise, how we ended up with Miss Japan. We did, kind of spoiler, have to do that one twice. We ran into some issues in production and had to redo it. And I felt like at that point, that was kind of the turning point where most of the processes and the machines had calibrated pretty well. For the duration of production, the first week and a half was kind of calibrating, making sure everything worked. But that felt like the redoing of that one felt like the turning point where mostly everything went well.
Like in an artist, as you develop, the later ones come.
It always happens.
Which they two were the most fun to make, like memorable, enjoyable, easy.
We put a lot of time into Miss USA. That probably I have the most digital files for that one. So I think in that, when we really focused it on that one, that was really exciting.
What are some of the things that went wrong that ended up as happy accidents? Are there some moments in here that you remember?
I think most of the happy accidents come with adding the brush strokes in, because that is once they're on, you can't fix that. And so there are times where you misjudge the depth or the speed, and it changes from either carving all the way through so you see the metallic paint underneath, versus just smearing and creating new colors, which can really give each piece a dynamic effect. And I think that's probably where we found the most, I guess you could say, happy accidents.
What would, in your perception of them as artworks, what changes about all that time you spent with the paintings, unstretched canvas versus seeing them here now, stretched and framed in a gallery setting? How does that change your perception of them as works?
To be honest, not too much. Just because we've done so many with Gretchen, with other artists as well, that we know typically, once they're on a wall, they're stretched, they're framed. There always is that, you don't see the back end. Me and my team, we live in the back end, so it's of course very nice to see them all cleaned up, but for us, the thing that we get going is the back end.
Yeah.
That's the really exciting part.
Gotcha. Having worked on them so long, all that back in time, you must, and the experimentation that you're doing with Gretchen, you must be thinking about what else could be done. What are some things that you would be excited to see on future Facetune portraits? Whether it's technique, materials, process, anything.
I would love to take like where we're at with these right now, and put more paint and like pull it off, and like really just keep building and building. Of course, every project has time constraints based on deadlines, based off of like how fast paint dries. Of course, you can always rework that, but just to kind of keep burying and building out and seeing where that takes you is always
Good time. Thanks, Jen. All right. This has been fun. If you all want to stay for another 5 minutes, I got a couple more questions for Gretchen. And then if you have any questions, we'll both stay up and ask away.
Also, I think one of the things that we should maybe mention is this idea of doing Facetune portraits from multiple different perspectives is something that Adam came up with because of what we were talking about with the multiple perspectives existing within the image. And I just wanted to call that out explicitly because seeing everybody talk about these works was a very cool way of doing that. So thank you for putting this together.
Oh, absolutely. Love it. Thank you. All right, back on the clock. So, talking about the different perspectives, there's a lot of different ways of looking at these as Miss Universe contestants, as we talked to Jeff about, as paintings, as digital processes. What do you think what's the perspective, what's the gaze that you think comes through strongest in the final works?
That algorithmic gaze that is in tension with the female body. I call these on-canvas battles and portraits of tension because they are everywhere is a mark and somewhere there's that disagreement.
Yeah, and just can you describe a little bit of how you get there? So there's Facetune apps, and then there's these marks. What's in between that happens?
The Facetune and BodyTune apps process the image, and then I give the filtered image and the original image to basically an algorithm that says what has changed. And based on what has changed, there's become a series of lines. I work with, again, to attach kitchen utensils and sponges and divide those into different sets of commands in G-code where ultimately the robot is quite dumb. It just draws lines.
And you direct it. Do you think like if Facetune is changing the cultural standards of beauty as an app, as an algorithm, do you think art can do the same thing?
Well, I think art to some extent has been Facetuned. There's a homogenization of what people expect at a museum or a painting to look like. It's not the same algorithm, but it is a set of algorithmically influenced preferences that we've all become used to.
Yeah, interesting. That happens across cultures.
Yeah, I think it's very common for major museums to be putting on the same sorts of shows. And
Is there something good about beauty algorithms, Facetune? Is there something positive?
the most positive use of Facetune that I've seen is in the trans community who is experimenting with seeing themselves in different forms. There is also, I do want to mention, there's an app for men called Manly that should be investigated and is one of the studio investigations that we're looking at. Manly, and men are also told to look a certain way. It's just a different set of algorithms. There's also a series of algorithm apps called Nudify, which undresses people. And I'm also very curious to see the same process literally undress people as well.
We're all learning something. How much have you watched Miss Universe pageants before? Is this part of your background? Is this new with the series? Like, how personally are tied to it are you?
I was really looking for something that would show the absurdity of the beauty standard, so I wanted to start with beautiful people, or people that the culture had deemed to be beautiful, and I wanted to start with a diversity. I considered Olympic athletes, for example. This really just became the absolute right subject for this conversation.
Yeah, it's been very poignant to be able to talk about the works in that context with this subject matter for sure. If you were thinking about the homogeneity of beauty, is there some practice that you would like to see added to the Miss Universe pageantry?
So I had a conversation with Jeff, not as this one, not when he was standing right here, about different countries have different, in France, if you've had any plastic surgery done, you cannot be a contestant from that country. And then in Venezuela, there's a team of 6 plastic surgeons on the committee. And so there is this relationship between plastic surgery, between face tuning, and who knows if France will change or whatever else happens, but I do think it'd be interesting from like a doping perspective for Miss Universe to establish a policy around different types of modification. But then, what's the difference between a nose job and Invisalign, and where it's a very interesting, I don't know, but I think they should have to make a decision on that.
That's a tough one. Are there countries that, as you've looked at so many contestants from different countries, are there countries that you would want to paint that are not participating in this universe?
Not every country does, like Miss Austria. Austria doesn't participate. Miss Switzerland hasn't participated in a long time. And these are countries where I've had a lot of exhibitions and have a lot of collectors, so it's a bit sad. But I think it's also, that's very interesting when countries decide not to participate. The UAE had their first contestant this last year, and she is of Ukrainian origin, and that created an interesting set of controversies as well, because only 13% of the UAE is Emirati anyway, so what does it really mean to be Emirati?
Right.
But people have lots of opinions about whether or not she should have been the first Miss UAE.
How do you think men see this work differently than women do?
I think that men see the pressure, especially if they have women in their lives, but they don't see what the actual differences are. Something like 90% of women use this, but it's not just TikTok and Instagram, it's Zoom. Zoom has a feature called Touch Up My Appearance. It is not making people skinnier, but people use this for professional headshots. They use it for looking younger.
And stuff.
And you must check out the Manly app, because its entire description is of toxic masculinity in a paragraph.
I will not be checking that out.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And we would love to take a couple questions if anybody has them about the works, about Gretchen's background, anything. Hi.
Thank you for coming.
When you made the decision to work with a robot to do the white Facetune part of it, what was that decision like versus you just
Projecting and drawing the lines
with
myself.
your hand?
Yeah, great question. I did think a lot about that. As Gen was saying, these are very process-driven paintings. And the violence of the robot coming in, the actual infliction of technology, even after starting this process, I thought about, okay, do I actually need the robot in this? And we talked about this too. Even though in the final painting we don't see that, and I spend a lot of effort to try and make this look painterly, like these lines are not done by a robot. The feel of when they're made is the feeling that I want to come across in this, and I am still a traditional mystic painter at heart, where I think something about that violence of the machine doing it does come across somehow.
The truth of it, yeah.
And also, if I was like, no, I promise the algorithm said Miss Russia needs bigger boobs, it's just the trustworthiness as well. It's literally not me. I don't want to be accused of saying that I'm the one who made any of these decisions about the body.
It feels like there's like a defilement happening, but like you're authoring the defilement. You're like saying like, because I've used these apps too, and it's like you're saying like, well, maybe I'm part of this architecture of defilement. Like, is there a work in the show where you feel like exaltation enters the conversation?
In an abstract painting way, yes. There is a point in this process, usually when I'm yelling again, down, faster, where this is, I am not thinking about subject, I am not thinking about concept, I am thinking about the way that this paint is accumulating as it gets scraped off of her arm and it's going to leave it there. And the way I learned painting was both with Billy Childish in this figurative painting tradition and then in studying the Abex movement, like learning about the differences of white paint from Reinman and learning about gesture from Guston and the very painterly, non-blended brush mark sort of thing. And even when I was making very traditional paintings in my training process, there's always a forgetting of the subject for me in the actual execution, and that is exaltation to me. There are some gorgeous brush marks in these works.
There are. We talked a little bit about the challenge of the works themselves and the violence of the mark making. I found that being here in the gallery every day, living with these paintings, the beauty of them shines through more every day, and it's partly about not the underlying image or the marks made on top, but sort of the perfection in the imperfection, and just the ability for all of them to look great no matter how they've been, as you say, defiled or scarred with these marks or not. And there's a beauty that really comes through in seeing that across different countries, different parts of the world, different body types.
Yeah, and I think like the entry of not just the uncanny but the grotesque as well. The process is sort of grotesque, and then also they are, those. I think you not just kind of two options as a portrait painter. You glorify your subject. You give them sort of something they might not have, or kind of pull it out. Where a traditional portrait really came to capture likeness. This system systematically annihilates the idea of likeness. It changes what would make you into this generic thing. So the beauty that can come from that, we're really left with portraits that I like more. Like I went to the Francis Bacon exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery in London just before coming back here, and talk about grotesque, difficult portrait work that Sainsbury was so eager to have done to himself. And I feel like the glory of glorifying and making a beautiful painting that is a beautiful woman is going to just be somewhat boring to look at over time. And these women are beautiful, and then they're also grotesquely destroyed.
Any other questions? I want to just congratulate Gretchen on an amazing body of work, and thank you all for coming. We've got some more beverages in the front. You can hang out for a little bit. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. I really